which is navigating conflicts between people and beavers and people again with Alexa Whipple. Alexa is the director of the Methow Beaver Project, a program of Methow Salmon Recovery Fund. As a restoration ecologist, she works for sustainable, effective, and collaborative solutions to challenging environmental and social conditions. She is a co-chair of the Washington Beaver Working Group, the Washington Beaver Policy Group, and the National Beaver Working Group's Policy and Legal Committee. She is also a graduate of the Beaver Corps' Beaver Coexistence Training Program. Alexa completed her Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Biology at Virginia Tech and her Master of Science in Ecology at Eastern Washington University, where she focused on beaver-mediated restoration of degraded streams across Western North America. So please welcome Alexa Whipple.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to talk to you about conflict. It is one of these areas that I never thought I would be necessarily good at, but it turns out when it comes to beavers, I seem to have a deep well for trying to resolve conflict. And I'm grateful for it because this is the most important work besides raising a daughter and that I've ever done, and trying to secure a future for her and all other species on this planet. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to share with you today. I am a wildlife biologist, an ag consultant, restoration ecologist, but like the rest of you, a human who absolutely requires fresh water to live. So it's a big part of why I do what I do, but a great respect for all wildlife, all species, all life. And our main focus at the Methow Beaver Project since 2008 has been partnering with beavers to restore our watersheds, because all life pretty much depends on water, some more than others. But we've expanded since 2008 to really focus on building partnerships for comprehensive beaver management in our watersheds, across our landscapes, across the Northern Hemisphere. So we started with beaver relocation. Like I said, it's an amazing tool. Beavers are not the tool. The actual relocation is the tool I'm speaking of. And we started by live trapping, partnering the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to provide housing in old derelict fish raceways, releasing with as many of our community members as possible to witness the real magic and special opportunity to be around beavers and put them in a new area to hopefully thrive. And then when it turns into something like this, where it's absolutely amazing water storage and biodiversity and water security and climate resilience. We also focus on outreach and education, from our partnership building to providing internships for college students and high school students, workshops to share knowledge, public events, and university tours, all sorts of things. We do a lot of outreach, but we're so grateful to others who do outreach too. And we're incredibly excited about all the great publishing that's been happening over the last 5 to 7 years about beavers, in particular eager. That has really launched beavers into a new plane of recognition and household naming, mostly on a positive front, but also incredibly grateful to a great filmmaker, Sarah Koenigsberg, with the Beaver Believers. She has launched 1,000 ships, truly, or 1,000 beavers, in inspiring people to care about beavers in a thoughtful, enthusiastic, tragic, and engaging way. So thank you to Sarah. Beaver coexistence, that's newer to Beaver Project's realm, Methow Beaver Project's realm, but thanks to all of our great partners across Washington and Massachusetts and across the US and British Columbia specifically, and Alberta. Oh my gosh, there's so many great partners. We've learned so much about providing coexistence services and sharing the outreach and information to others to do it themselves. We also focus on beaver-based stream flow restoration. This is basically mimicking beaver habitat. It's part of the low-tech process-based restoration suite, and we are excited to be expanding it into our 2 sister watersheds, the Methow and the Okanagan, rapidly for tributary-wide and watershed-wide restoration actions. And now we are really getting neck deep into beaver policy and management. As Rachel mentioned, I'm a part of our local policy work, state as well as federal policy work, and it's a big learning curve. I'm excited to be there, but sometimes being the least informed lets you ask the dumbest questions that get you onto better conversations. So I like to remain humble and ask as many questions as possible. And now I really feel like what we really need is great lobbyists to work with. California is leading the way, especially through Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. Kate and Brock, oh, they are gifted, to say the least, in their beaver advocacy. And they've worked with Jennifer Fearing from Fearless Advocacy to really catapult beavers in a positive way into the spotlight in California. And now Molly Alves from Washington, the Tulalip Tribe's beaver biologist, wildlife biologist, is now going to be leading up their beaver programming at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're sad to lose her, but super excited for California to have someone as amazing as her. Okay, so to the meat of my presentation, navigating conflicts between people and beavers, and then between people also about beavers generally. So as you can see in the background, a stuffed culvert. This is a whale culvert. These were beavers with incredible ambition and got the job done, but they have a flow device going in there now, thanks to the Wenatchee Eniat Beaver Project here in Washington, and are happily living upstream of this culvert. So I just wanted to preface that. So I'm going to talk about why we should care about conflicts between beavers and people, the sources of that conflict, strategies for navigating conflict, and some takeaways at the end. I'm going to be as comprehensive as I can be, but in 40 minutes, and I'm already down quite a bit, it's not everything. So always reach out to other beaver-based organizations, including Methow Beaver Project. If you didn't catch everything, if you want more information, more detail, one-on-one chat, showing up to your working group, all of those things are out there and possible. So I love to start with the big picture. Our incredible big blue marble, planet Earth, our refuge. She's been around for 3.8 billion years, and she's a darn capable planet. She's been through evolving life becoming extirpated nearly, and then re-evolving it, 5 major extirpations, up until the dinosaurs, basically, who dominated the planet for quite a while. And then, lo and behold, a meteor strike comes along and changes our climate rapidly, and beavers go. But these small rodents that ultimately evolved into us take over, and now we're dominating this planet. I would say we're doing it consciously, where the dinosaurs did not, most likely. And there's a lot of challenge now to how we are treating this planet. I kind of like to use the analogy of toddlers with matches, that with that power of fire and a match comes great responsibility. And we haven't necessarily been taking that responsibility very seriously. And this is sometimes what things end up like when you play with matches and don't have a lot of direction or instruction as to how this planet works. A lot of us do have that ecological amnesia. And when this planet was burgeoning with fecundity and quantity of everything, we didn't need to worry about it much. But there's so many of us now, and we're doing so many different things to make it work for our priorities and for our objectives, that we really are way past time for slowing down and taking a look at how we've impacted it, but also how we can restore it. And so that's where I like to really focus on changing our whole perspective to that ecological mindset rather than the ego-logical mindset. Many of you are familiar with this. I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but we're part of this planet. We're not dominating this planet. We shouldn't be dominating this planet if we want to keep surviving on it, as well as all of the other species that we should care about. So it's time to put our big kids get boots on and put the matches down, and or at least put them to better use, and start doing the hard work of restoring our watersheds, what life depends on. It's all one water cycle for the whole planet, from ocean to sky to lands to streams and wetlands and back again to the ocean, all one. So it starts for me in my work with North American beaver and across the Northern Hemisphere where beavers were native, They've been around managing wetlands, doing all the watershed shaping, building biodiversity, evolving other species, supporting other species, creating disturbance resilience for over 7 million years. Most people have no clue how much beavers have impacted our watersheds over time. And I think most of the people on this call do, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but I do like to think of this and encourage others to think of it too as our watersheds as a three-legged stool: hydrology, geology, and biology, with beavers being the primary of influence on biology, as well, the plants and other species through wetlands and riparian areas. But that leg was broken when beavers were nearly extirpated from, well, Europe, then North America. And we haven't really recovered from that. And we are still allowing beavers to be managed in a way that is not holistic, not comprehensive in any way. And there is room potentially for a sustainable harvest, and there may be need for lethal conflict removal. But we're not at that place when we've maximized every other alternative for a keystone species who has outsized impact and benefit in our watersheds, especially today with the impact of degradation on our watersheds. The primary thing I want to remind people of is that we have depressed beaver populations. Even in the Midwest, I've heard, I haven't been there in quite a while. I grew up in Virginia, so crossed across the Midwest and came out to Washington State. But we have depressed beaver populations in many states, and in some places in every state, I am sure. This map is a GIS interpretation of the BRAT model, and it's showing basically in blue the capacity for beavers in a specific watershed, this being in Colorado, Trail Creek watershed in the Gunnison Basin. And in blue is potential for beavers. In green is actual current beaver activity. That's showing us 16% occupied of that watershed. I'm going to repeat this in Washington. This is Bear Creek watershed. Blue is potential or capacity for beavers. Green is where beavers currently are. We're at 18% occupied. This is in places, especially in Washington, where we've been trying to increase the beaver population for the last 15 years. And this is one of our most successful watersheds. It's primarily due to degradation of the habitat in the first place, from beaver removal, from livestock, from roads, from irrigation, from land conversion, development, bridges, all the things. But if we're going to look at truly restoring our watersheds, we have to scale restoration to the scale of degradation. So 72 watersheds in Washington State, major watersheds across the North American continent. We got to scale up. And beavers are our best partner in trying to scale up stream by stream, mile, kilometer restoration. That's my hope. That's where we can go. So why should we care about coexisting with beavers? Well, we all need water. We all want and need biodiversity, whether we realize it or not. Climate disturbance and resilience. This is the 2020 Pearl Hill fire in Washington State, the biggest on record, over 400,000 acres. Some of the only places that were still green after that 400,000 acre burn were beaver ponds. And down in the lower right-hand corner, that's what the rest of that stream looked like, East Foster Creek. Why should we care? The intrinsic value and connection that so many people don't know is missing from their lives, but is absolutely essential in our DNA for our true happiness, maybe, our connectivity to this land and space and planet that we all rely on. It's the only way we're going to save it and ourselves is if we embrace the connectivity and take care of it and show the reciprocity that is absolutely essential for our future. So I want to show that beavers work. Beavers work when you're trying to restore streams, when you're trying to keep water around longer, when you're trying to face arid conditions for longer periods of the year. It works, supports salmon. A huge part of what I do is salmon work, but I know that's not everywhere. But other species are struggling and failing because of how we treat our watersheds everywhere. So anadromous systems, that's where we have ocean-going fish. It's working, whether it's beavers or beaver-based restoration, and beavers then take over because they can finally get into that habitat. It's working. Headwater meadow systems, This one's in Colorado too. Mark Beardsley, Ecometrics, doing incredible work there, among others. This is right here in Washington after wildfire and debris flows, incising a channel 10 to 12 feet. Within 2 years, we've got it almost back up to the top. That is being repeated state after state that is doing beaver-based restoration or low-tech process-based restoration. We're seeing very rapid recoveries in most of the streams we're working in. This is where beaver is taken over within a few months of these woody structures going in, or beaver mimicry. This is where beaver took our materials and built their own dam out of some of our beaver mimicking materials that we had on site. Absolutely love their creativity and ambition. It's so inspiring. Okay, sources of conflict. These ones are pretty straightforward. Tree damage, that is the primary call we get, and we get a lot of calls for beaver conflict. And I would like to point out that we call it conflict and not nuisance, because nuisance does not do the right justice to the challenges we're facing with beavers. It's not beavers' fault. We're responsible for that. So I saw that in the chat with somebody who pointed that out, the definition of nuisance being to cause harm. And yeah, we're just in conflict with them. Tree damage is one of the easiest things to remedy as well. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Crop damage, that's a little harder to remedy because a lot of our agriculture, at least in Washington, is located adjacent to streams and rivers. So very difficult to keep beavers out, but there are methods, especially fencing and electric fencing, which is coming on more and more. And even temporary electric fencing can be incredibly effective. Infrastructure damage to roads, homes, stormwater facilities, power lines. The more of us there are humans, the more we're building roads and then power lines and need stormwater facilities for the impermeable surface water challenges. So there's a lot of conflict there, but there's also solutions. We'll get to that. One of the biggest challenges, I'd say bigger than all the actual beaver conflict, is the people-to-people conflict, especially around single species management, how we've been doing it for so long with the North American wildlife management model. Single species, we're all about focusing on single species, but we've got to get our heads out of the silos and into these complex environments of holistic management. That's the only way we're going to get through a more sustainable approach to living on this planet. So in single species management, we often have stream restoration focused on that single species, and we come into conflict when beavers aren't considered, when you've just built a beaver Shangri-La, low flow, narrow opening, voila, you get a beaver within months of finishing that restoration project. So we get a lot of conflict in that department. Agriculture, irrigation ditches, basically the easiest place for a beaver to dam because it's about the flow that they want, 2 to 5 CFS, and narrow. Oh, it's just so easy for beavers to get into irrigation ditches. Source of conflict is oversimplified management. In Washington state and in most other states across the country, beavers are only managed as a fur bearer or as a nuisance species. And that's not okay, not anymore. We understand this. We've understood it for a long time. You know, as Emily mentioned, we've dropped beavers to get them back into Idaho and California since the 30s. Washington had its own reintroductions in the 30s and the 70s. The US Forest Service sponsored these reintroductions. We're not clueless about the importance of beavers as a keystone species in our watersheds and for biodiversity. We're just not managing them for it. That is low-hanging fruit, people. We can do this. So again, the depressed beaver populations, it's proven. We know we don't have as many beavers as we used to. We're very clear on that. And our watersheds and our climate resilience and our biodiversity are proving it as well. They're all in the tank. All right, so what are our strategies for navigating conflict? We focus on outreach, coexistence, relocation, policy, and practice change. As I mentioned earlier, we are a comprehensive beaver project. We are doing it all, doing our best. And we're doing a lot of things really well, in my opinion, but we need everybody. We need beaver projects like the Illinois Beaver Project, like the Bioconservancy. We need more of them in every state in order to really make a difference. And one of the most priority things is that we engage with our partner tribes. We have the Colville, the 12 tribes of the Colville, the Methow, the Okanagan, the Eniat, the Wenatchee, the Nispelum, so many tribal communities that aren't recognized as individuals, but sometimes more likely as a whole, the Yakima, the Cowlitz, the, so many wonderful people involved in beaver work across Washington, across Oregon and the West, and across North America. This is their lands, and we need to be engaging with them on any work we do for restoration of the environment. We need to be learning from them as well. So we share a lot. Outreach is so critical for us, for public events, for partnership training events, for practitioner training. Being a good partner is a critical part of outreach. You're only going to have a strong foundation if all your partners help build you up. This is WDFW folks, Colville tribes folks, as well as some other NGOs, some of our salmon recovery program folks. We focus hard on keeping the bridges happy and healthy between our partners. Take people out for tours. We go out, we walk tour sites with our partners, our funding partners, our regulatory partners, and talk about the challenges, the successes, what could make it easier, how do we accelerate this? And we try to be kind, creative, bold, and persistent in all the things that we do. And it's actually one of the funnest and most challenging jobs you could ever have, in my opinion. And I've had a lot of challenging jobs working outside in ag my whole life. So coexistence. The services that we can provide that are really effective. I will say that over 85% effective. And there's several tools in our toolkit in order to apply to different coexistence challenges. So I encourage everyone who is dabbling in trying to live with beavers or helping others get permitted to do so. There's so much information out here. If you don't have it, reach out to us, reach out to Beaver Institute, others. There's a lot of info to share. So here's a place where beaver dams were causing flooding that actually flooded a road. The dam itself wasn't the problem directly, but indirectly. Moving in, applying a flow device. That road was dry by the end of the day. That took about 4 hours to install. Road was dry, passage was available. There's private homes up this road. But you got to get training, and you got to have insurance. So training is absolutely critical to make sure this works as best it can, because it's been applied in many places without training, and it often fails and it gives it a really bad name. So get the training. Trained professionals. This is Beavers Northwest crew out of Western Washington. Such a great crew of people, and they help train us as well as Beaver Corps. Listen, oh my gosh. If I can't stress that enough. Listen more than you talk when you're working in coexistence world. Find out what the problems are, repeat what the problems are to make sure you've understood it correctly, and then start talking about potential solutions. Listening is key. Some of those potential solutions are tree wrapping. Lots of different ways to do it. This one is the one that works best for us in a snowy environment where we don't have to get permission to put T-posts in the ground because we don't use them. That's a great way to go. A flared bottom, but you can do it in a bunch of different ways. Just don't use chicken wire and leave it wide enough that you're not going to girdle your trees. Flow devices, a lot of training needed for that one. Get a hold of the best management practices that Project Beaver has developed with a lot of different practitioners chiming in to make them the best they can be at this point. And it is a living document. It will be revised as needed. Build trust by knowing your craft, getting that training. Propose coexistence as an experiment to potential landowners or land managers. Make sure you look at it as, we're going to try this. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. And we'll keep trying until we solve the problem. Be the good partner you need to be in order to work with beavers and people together. Create backup plans, relocation or removal. Sometimes that's lethal. Not ideal, but the more trust we build, the more opportunity we'll have. So be a reliable, good partner. People are uncomfortable with change. Sometimes it's just learning about the change and hearing someone else say, yeah, that's a lot of change. That can probably be hard to live with, I'm sure. But most people, once they understand beavers better, are wanting to live with them. We get almost 95% of people calling us about beaver conflict that starts with, you need to relocate these beavers, turns into coexistence opportunity. So I've been wowed in the last 5 years since we really started focusing on coexistence at the majority, 95% choose coexistence first. And we make it easy, we do, but we guarantee that we'll try to relocate if we don't solve their problem to their satisfaction. Hasn't happened. Be curious and creative, try different things. Beavers Northwest, partnering with their local department or local public works in Snohomish County, figured out a whole different way to put in a flow device that didn't involve pipes because of fish passage issues. So it's called the notch protector. We put it in Salmon Creek in another river, part of the Methow River this year, mostly to allow seasonal fish passage in an area that was so simplified, beavers were creating a passage barrier, but only short term. And it's worked. And now that's going to be a seasonal notch protector that we put in at Salmon Creek. And then stormwater management. Be curious and creative about stormwater management and call Katie Holzer if you really are interested, because she's done amazing work in Gresham, Oregon. They built a stormwater facility. Beavers moved into it. And Katie, instead of saying, get rid of those beavers, said, are they helping or hindering our water quality treatment from stormwater management? And it turns out they're helping it like crazy, and they can be tolerated with some coexistence devices and practices. So we see incredible removal of heavy metals, of nitrogen, phosphorus, sediment, as well as pesticide pollutants. So much more to that story, but I don't have time to share all of it with you. But also be creative and curious around planning for beavers in your restoration sites. Even if it's not intended for beavers, know that they will likely show up if there's improved riparian wetland habitat. They're going to show up eventually. Thanks to Jen Vanderhoof in King County for creating this incredible document, Planning for Beavers Manual. It's focused on west side of Washington, but can be applied across the country with different practices that are included in there. Brilliant document. Okay, so funding sources, be creative with funding. I've listed a lot of stuff here. This PDF is going to be available to you all, but I'm sure you all already know most of these. Looking for private foundational funding to support coexistence. NGOs like Defenders of Wildlife, Paul Allen Foundation, the big ones and the little ones that are more local and regional. State endangered species and habitat recovery programs. Our Department of Ecology funds a lot of stream flow restoration, water quality restoration, stormwater management. Federal, USDA, I know the Midwest is having huge challenges with the USDA's APHIS program, but they actually fund a lot of our coexistence work by providing materials from their Western Wildlife Conflict Funds. So USDA can be very different in different states depending on the state director and the mandate. So I encourage people to keep up with those conversations and do some power mapping and look for key retirements from some of those places if you're having trouble, as other states are doing it. And maybe getting those state directors together is one of the things we could do to try to change some of the management in different states. Conservation Reserve Program for agriculturalists, that's a really good one that we're taking advantage of. NRCS and U.S. Fish and Wildlife's National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Partners Program. But really what this comes down to is cost benefit. And there are 3 really great studies and a lot of anecdotal data, or anecdata, as Emily Fairfax taught me that word. There is a proven cost benefit to coexisting with beavers rather than waiting for them to do damage to public works and then having to repair them and trap those beavers out. This table speaks for itself. I'm not going to go into all the details because really what I'm here is just sprinkle lots of resources at you today and then hope that you'll follow up on the ones that really stand out as a key opportunity in your neck of the woods. And if you're going to do coexistence yourself as an NGO or as a for-profit business, make sure you have, CYA, I'll leave it at that, have your insurance and have clear landowner agreements established that define your project scope, parties' roles and actions and responsibilities, define access, define timelines, termination protocol, and make sure you get the signatures on the dotted line for it. This is the only way that you can protect yourself doing this work. It's a critical work, but there are folks who may turn on you, and that is life. That is life. So be prepared for that. And then commit to taking care of that coexistence service, ideally forever, but at least 1 year to make sure you know it's working, and commit to fixing it if it's not working, or doing the best you can as defined in your landowner agreement as to what will be the getting out of the game plan for your project if coexistence is not working. Usually that comes with removal of the beavers. So relocation, I'm going to kind of blast through this right now because we're really talking about coexistence, but relocation can breed coexistence. Oftentimes when we have someone who is not interested in coexistence at the beginning, we go ahead and relocate, but then we offer coexistence services anyways, like tree wrapping or a culvert protector, to make sure the next beavers that come through aren't going to cause the same problem again. Because I'm going to skip ahead of here. It is a short-term solution. When there's good beaver habitat and it's newly vacated by us relocating beavers or them being lethally removed by a wildlife control operator, new beavers find that habitat, and usually very quickly. So it is an extremely short-term solution and will only cause that landowner or land manager headache in a very short order. That's a trap right there where we're trapping. That's beautiful wetland habitat. We did a coexistence project right after we relocated beavers from here, and now those folks are living well with beavers up Eneas Valley. Relocation is very stressful for beavers. I will leave it at that. It is not easy for them to handle this, be dropped off in a strange place, and expect to make miracles in really degraded habitat. So it's a good last resort. Success of relocation varies tremendously for many variables. Release site conditions are the biggest ones. So be conscientious if you are relocating that you put them in the best place possible. Ideally, a restoration project site that's got lots of food and some deep water created and waiting for them. And get training and permission. Those are essential parts of it. Not too many states are doing relocation yet. Washington leading the way, California right behind us. We're grateful to have this tool in our toolkit, but it is the one we reach for last. We're working on modernizing policy and practice. We are building the bridges with our state regulators in order to do that. Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is the primary one. We work with all the different agencies through our Beaver Working Group, Washington Beaver Working Group, state agencies, federal agencies, tribes, practitioner organizations. We don't have trapping representatives on there yet. We are establishing relationships with them. It's been a pretty challenging relationship in the past, but we're actually making really good headway right now with 2 different trapping related organizations in Washington. So I'm very happy about that because most of those folks are conservation minded, absolutely, and see that there's fewer beavers on the landscape and in our watersheds. There's just a lot of distrust, and that takes time to get past and build. We're working on creating policy working groups in our state with last year's, or actually earlier this year, 2024's Senate Bill 5846 for Beaver Ecosystem Management Bill. It did not move past its second committee. It got through its first committee, but we're working on it. And that's a huge plus for us. We now have our official relocation program. It's being voted on in September, but we have approval from the commission, and we're hoping to make it a rule and not just a pilot program next month for relocation. Again, the last tool that we reach for, but a really important one. We are really focused on helping the Beaver Corps program grow in every way, shape, and form. And it's not the only way to get experience, but it's really comprehensive, and you have mentoring and then partnerships with all the other Beaver Corps graduates forevermore. And best management practices, we covered that. Beaver Restoration Guidebook, it's going through some updates. Look for the latest versions in the next year. I'm very excited to see it be updated, especially around coexistence work. And then, of course, standardizing the same practices with low-tech and beaver-based restoration practices. We're working on standardizing those things. We offer peer-to-peer learning workshops and conferences. Lots of my compatriots do. And it's really important because more and more people are doing this work, the more they can access the training. And again, Jen's resource, planning for beavers, and then federal policy work, working on the Dams Act with Washington Congresswoman Del Bene. She's doing amazing work. It's going to be reintroduced this fall. It was reintroduced once, didn't make it too far, but we've built a lot, helped her build a lot more foundation with the Beaver Institute leading the way and Animal Welfare Institute. And there's another bill in the works. I'm not going to mention it right now because it's still under a little bit under wraps, but look for another one coming out too, that hopefully the two will be complementary and sail through both the House and the Senate in this next legislative session in DC. And state policy, only a couple states out there, Wisconsin, Utah for one of them, but what's inside of it needs some work, of course. But the only two in the US, Utah and Wisconsin, have state beaver management policies. Washington's working on it, but we're not there yet. California, they're working on one. Oregon's working on one, but I'm proud of Washington for starting the conversations. But yeah, the low-hanging fruit, we could get there faster and do a lot more good work for, as the graduate student there's talked about, to do the work that benefits everybody and not just certain interest groups. Issues to focus on, I just want to throw these out there. State wildlife action plans, every state has them. They're required by federal law to have them, but whether you act on them or not, or whether your state acts on them or not, is a big question mark. Listed species, priority habitat, climate resilience and water security, conflict mitigation. That's for everybody, from our departments of transportation, our municipalities, wetlands, stormwater management, Clean Water Act. There's so many things to focus on. And then take action. I saw some people in the chat talking about writing their Congress people, and I encourage you tremendously to do so. It makes a difference. A personal letter makes a huge difference. Showing up to give testimony at a hearing makes a huge difference. Try to do it as much as you can. So takeaways: grow the community stewardship, grow the, reduce ecological amnesia, help people understand the value and the connectivity. Support and initiate comprehensive beaver management plans in your state based on science, based on inclusivity. Provide coexistence services, get the training. Participate in knowledge sharing networks. Your state, start a beaver working group, participate in National Beaver Working Group, and eventually through the North American Beaver Knowledge Network that Emily mentioned. So exciting to see that coming on board soon. And reach out to those you know have resources. Most of them want to share them, and as quickly as possible. So be a good partner and persevere in your great work people are doing. And as always, try to make it fun. Make the revolution irresistible as best you can. All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Alexa, that was so great. I'm sorry we don't have time for Q&A, but I know you'll hang around and look at the chat at the Q&A, and I enjoy working with you in the National Beaver Working Group so much. So we really appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.